In this video, you're going to perform some refactoring of your own in the to-do application. So we're going to focus on the same stuff. We're going to have a second JavaScript file. We're going to define our functions in one file, and we're going to use them somewhere else. Now, I have already outlined which functions I'd like you to create to give us a bit of structure as we move through this video. I'm going to go ahead and paste my comments for this challenge at the very bottom of the to-do application file. I'm actually going to go ahead and close the files for the Notes app, and I'll crack open the HTML file for the To-Do app, and now at the bottom I'll actually paste the comments. So these are the functions that you're going to create in the separate file which you'll set up. You're going to set up and link that file, and we're going to have 5. We're going to have get saved to-dos, save to-dos, render to-dos, and generate to-do DOM. These should all feel very similar from what we did with the Notes application. We're also going to add another one into the mix, generate summary DOM. So with get saved to-dos, we want to fetch the data out of local storage and parse it. We'll add that function call up top where we set up our to-dos array. That's this code right here. The next one on the list, we have save to-dos. Save to-dos is going to save some data to local storage, which we currently do in line right here. We're also going to break out render to-dos. That's already a function. We just have to relocate it. And generate to-do DOM. The to-do DOM generation happens right inside of here. We'll break that out into a function call. The last one, and the only one that we don't have a real similarity for in the Notes app, is generate summary DOM. For this one, you're going to break out the generation of our summary DOM elements. You'll then call the function to get the DOM element back, and you will actually append it to the document. So take some time to knock all of this out, and you can always refer to the refactoring we did in the last video. If you have to rewatch that video or refer to the code, that's perfectly fine. So take some time to create that new file, get your functions in there, and then actually call those functions and test your work. Now remember, with refactoring, we do not need to change a bunch of code, cross our fingers, and hope that things work when we save the file. We can do each one of these one at a time, and this is actually the approach I recommend. If I fix all 5 and save the file and it's broken, the error could be in any one of these functions. If I fix one and it's broken, I know the error was there. So I make my changes until it works and I move on to the next one, going down the list one at a time. That's going to save you a lot of hair and a lot of sanity. All right, pause the video and I'll see you in a few moments. How'd you do? Hopefully you were able to get those functions created and actually used. Over in the To-Do app folder, I'm going to start things off by defining a new file. I'll call it to-do-functions.js. And the first thing we have to do is make sure this file actually runs by adding a script tag that loads it in. Over here, we're going to add that script tag. And remember, we want to add it first. If we're going to define functions in the to-do functions file and use them in the to-do app file, they need to exist before they can be used. So we have to load that file in first. Right here, a new source tag. We set up our attribute. We are going to load in to-do-functions.js. So we define the functions, then we actually use them. Everything is in the correct order. We can now save the HTML file. No more changes there. The next thing I'm going to do is just take my challenge comments and bring them over to that new file so we can work on them one by one. And we're just going to go down the list. I'm going to start with get saved to-dos. Now, we already have the functionality for getting those saved to-dos. It's sitting up top right here. This is where we read them, check them, and parse them. I'm going to take this code and break it out into a function. Over here, const get saved to-dos. This one doesn't take any arguments. Its job is going to be to run the code that we just copied to the clipboard. Now, we will make a few modifications. I'm going to return the parsed array. And if there is no data, I'll add on else, and I will return an empty array, just like we did for the Notes application. So at this point, we can actually save this file, use get saved notes, and test our work before moving on. Excuse me, get saved to-dos. So over in the to-do app file, let's do just that. I'm going to remove those empty lines, and I'm going to replace our empty array with a call to get saved to-dos. We can then save this file and we can check our work over inside of the browser. We are still getting thing 1 and thing 2 from local storage. So we've changed the actual structure of our code without changing its functionality. Next up, we have save to-dos. So let's go ahead and set up the function for that. Const save to-dos. I'm going to set this equal to a function. And this one is saving a specific array, so we are going to get that in as the argument. Now all we have to do is find out where that code previously lived, and it previously lived down here. Right here, this is where we have our local storage line. I'm going to cut it out and replace it with a call to save to-dos, passing in the to-dos array. Now we can take out the local storage line we just removed from this file, and we can paste it over into this function. And there we have it. Our second one is converted. Now I mentioned that render to-dos is an easy one because render to-dos already exists. Over here, we have that function. This one is a long one, so let's go ahead and cut it out of this file, bringing it over here. I'm going to put it just under the comment. Excellent. Now the other things that we're going to end up doing is generate to-do DOM. We want to pull out the functionality for generating that DOM node. Now at first glance, this might seem completely unnecessary since we have a very simple DOM structure. But remember, in a few videos, we're going to be adding in a checkbox to actually toggle the completed status. We're going to add in a button to remove the element. So this code is actually going to get a bit more complex. It's a good idea to just abstract it away now. Down below, let's define that function. Const generate to-do DOM. It's going to equal a function, and we need the to-do data in order to generate the DOM, and all we're going to do is return the DOM element. We can take these two lines right here, I can cut them out, and I can paste them down below. Then I just need to return the DOM element, in this case, return P. Now I could add that call right here, create a variable, and then use that variable. I could also just break this onto one line if I wanted to. Right here, inside of append child as the first argument, I will just call generate to-do DOM, passing in the to-do. Now the return value from that function is going to be passed into append child. So the end result is that our paragraph tag is going to get appended exactly as it did before. Let's go ahead and actually test our work. I'm going to save both of our application files, and we can see that once both are saved, we are still getting our data showing up. We're able to see the individual paragraphs which are created via this code. Now, the last one I wanted you to work on was one for getting the summary DOM, which is the code right here. Very similar to generate to-do DOM. Right here, let's create that function, const generate summary DOM. This one is going to be a function. Now you needed to figure out whether or not this function needed any information, and it does. In this case, we need to know the incomplete to-dos length. So what I'm going to do is just pass in that array. So right here, I'll get incomplete to-dos, and then down below, we'll be able to take that code and copy and paste it. I'm going to take those two lines, I'm going to cut them out, and I'm going to paste them right in. Then we're just going to return the element that we worked to create. So right here, return summary. Excellent. Now that this function is all created, we can remove the comment and we can actually use it up above. All I'm going to do is add its call right inside of here, generate summary DOM, passing into it the incomplete to-dos array. Excellent. Now we have everything set up. We've broken out our code into those function calls, and we're going to go ahead and test our work. I save the file, and I still see my items, and I still see my summary, showing me how many to-dos I still have left to complete. Now, if we wanted to, we could always mess around with the local storage data to tweak it. Currently, we don't have a way via the UI to complete a to-do, but I could highlight false, change it to true, hit enter, and refresh the page. If I do that, we can now see you have one to-do left. So there we have it. We have a bit of refactoring in place. This is going to make our application a whole lot easier to expand on. We were about to add a whole bunch of new features, Let me delete these empty lines. And if we hadn't done the refactoring, those new features would have been very tedious to add because we would have been building on this house of cards. Now that things are well organized and structured, we're going to be able to continue on working on our apps. There's one more important topic I want to cover before we get back to new features. This is the topic of debugging. There are some very useful tools that we haven't explored just yet. They're going to make debugging your code so much easier. I'm excited to get to that. It's all up next.